Millionaire CEO leaves his wallet in a taxi and the driver makes one unexpected choice. The taxi was already gone. The sound of traffic swallowed the moment. Grant Holloway stood still on the curb, one hand inside his jacket pocket. Nothing was there. He checked again, slower this time. His phone, his keys, his passport, everything except the one thing he needed most. His wallet was gone, and his flight was boarding. 2 minutes. That was all he had before the gate closed. 2 minutes to decide what mattered more. A flight that could change his company's future, or a problem he couldn't fix from the air. If you believe in compassion and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one small act can change everything. People rushed past him without noticing. Wheels rolled. Doors slammed. The airport didn't care about hesitation. It only moved forward. Grant felt his chest tighten. Inside that wallet was more than cash. There were cards tied to millions of dollars, documents no one else could replace, access he couldn't afford to lose. And suddenly, he felt small. He thought about turning back, about chasing the taxi through traffic, about missing the flight and fixing this himself. Then the boarding announcement echoed again. Final call. Grant took one step forward, then stopped. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't sure which choice was right, and that scared him more than losing money. He didn't know it yet, but that missing wallet wasn't the real turning point. The real change had already started. It was sitting quietly in the back seat of a taxi, waiting for someone else to decide what to do next. Grant Holloway wasn't late. He was early, as usual, standing near the glass wall that overlooked the runway. People who worked with him said he never rushed, even when everything around him did. Years of boardrooms, negotiations, and quiet power had trained him to stay calm under pressure. This trip to Toronto was supposed to be routine, just another strategic move on a long list of wins. But losing his wallet cracked that sense of control in a way no market swing ever had. Inside that wallet were cards linked to corporate accounts, hotel reservations, and travel clearances. There was also a worn photo of his late mother, folded once too many times at the edges. Grant hadn't looked at that picture in months, but he knew exactly where it sat. For the first time in years, something personal felt exposed, floating out of reach. And that made the situation feel heavier than just money or logistics. While Grant boarded the plane, across the city, Lena Whitmore pulled her taxi into a quiet side street. Her shift had been long, filled with small conversations and tired faces sliding in and out of the back seat. She turned off the engine and sat for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. Driving at night paid the bills, but it drained her in ways she rarely talked about. Still, it was honest work, and she took pride in doing it right. Lena's life revolved around schedules, school pickups, and making sure her son felt safe. There wasn't much room for mistakes, because there was no one else to fix them. Every decision she made carried weight, even the small ones most people ignored. She had learned to move forward without expecting help or recognition. That mindset had kept her standing, even on the hardest days. As she reached behind the passenger seat to clean up, her fingers brushed against leather. She pulled the wallet out slowly, already sensing this wasn't a simple lost item. The thickness, the cards, the careful way everything was arranged told a story. This belonged to someone who lived a very different life from hers, and suddenly, she was holding a piece of that life in her hands. Lena checked the name inside, reading it twice to make sure she got it right. Grant Holloway. The title beneath it sounded important, though she didn't dwell on it. She wasn't impressed by status, only by responsibility. The question wasn't who he was, but what she should do next. And that question lingered longer than she expected. She thought about the lost and found process, about dropping it off and being done. That would be the easiest choice, the safest one, the one that cost her nothing. But something about the wallet made her pause, just long enough to reconsider. It felt like more than an object waiting to be returned. It felt like a moment asking for a response. Neither Grant nor Lena knew it yet, but their paths had already crossed. Not in person, not in conversation, but in consequence. One had lost something without realizing what it truly represented. The other had found something that carried more than value, and whatever came next would test who they really were. Lena stood beside her taxi longer than she needed to. holding the wallet as if it might tell her what to do. She could already picture the routine solution, dropping it off and moving on with her night. That option required no emotional energy and no personal involvement from her. It was the choice most people would make without thinking twice. And for a brief moment, she almost did exactly that. Instead, she opened the wallet again, this time slower, paying attention to the details. There were cards she had never owned and documents she didn't fully understand. Everything about it spoke of a life built on access, precision, and control. Yet the photo tucked inside broke that image in an instant. It reminded her that whoever owned this was human before anything else. Lena sat back in the driver's seat and tried calling the number listed inside. The call rang once, then went straight to voicemail without explanation. She didn't leave a message, unsure of what she would even say. Her son's backpack rested on the passenger seat, waiting for the morning rush. Life was already full enough without adding complications. She told herself she'd done enough by trying to call. No one would blame her for stopping there and letting the system handle the rest. Yet the thought didn't settle the way it should have. Something felt unfinished, like a sentence cut off too soon. That discomfort stayed with her longer than she expected. At home later that night, Lena put the wallet on the kitchen counter and walked away. She helped her son with homework, listened to him talk about his day, and smiled when he laughed. But her attention kept drifting back to the object waiting in the other room. It felt strange how something so small could carry so much weight. She realized she was already emotionally involved, whether she wanted to be or not. After putting her son to bed, she picked up her phone and hesitated again. Searching someone online felt intrusive, like crossing an invisible line. She wasn't trying to learn who he was, only how to reach him. That distinction mattered to her more than she could explain. Finally, she typed the name and waited. The profile appeared almost instantly, verified and polished but surprisingly quiet. There were no flashy posts or loud declarations of success, just a few professional photos and minimal personal information. It didn't feel like looking into a stranger's life, just a doorway left open. Lena stared at the screen, weighing one more choice. She wrote a short message, careful with every word, then read it twice before sending. There was no request, no expectation, only a simple statement of fact. She told him she had found something that belonged to him. When she pressed send, she felt a small shift inside her chest. That was the moment everything quietly changed direction. Grant sat in his seat as the plane lifted off, staring at the lights of the city shrinking beneath the clouds. The announcement about turning off electronic devices faded into background noise as his thoughts narrowed. He had handled pressure before, but this felt different because it wasn't strategic or negotiable. There was no assistant who could fix it quickly, no call he could make to erase the mistake. For the first time in a long while, he felt completely out of reach from his own resources. He replayed the moment in his mind, trying to remember when the wallet slipped away. The ride had been quiet, almost forgettable, just another transfer between meetings and deadlines. That ordinariness bothered him now more than anything else. Something so small had disrupted something so carefully managed, and the realization made him feel exposed in a way he wasn't used to. As the plane leveled out, Grant imagined worst-case scenarios he usually dismissed: delayed access to accounts, questions at customs, meetings thrown into chaos. But underneath those fears sat something deeper and harder to name. He hated depending on chance, and that's exactly where he was now, waiting on someone he didn't know to do the right thing. Back home, Lena lay awake long after the apartment went quiet. The wallet sat inside her bag by the door, heavier than it should have been. She told herself she'd already done enough by sending the message. There was no guarantee he would even see it anytime soon. Still, sleep refused to come easily. She thought about how fragile trust really was between strangers. Most days, people passed through her car without ever looking at her twice. Now she held something that could disrupt a life far removed from her own. That imbalance made her uncomfortable in ways she couldn't fully explain. She didn't want power over someone else's situation. Lena questioned her own motives, wondering why this mattered so much to her. It wasn't about reward, because she wasn't expecting any. It wasn't about recognition, because no one would know what she did. It was something quieter, something rooted in who she wanted to be, and that clarity brought both peace and fear. As the night stretched on, She checked her phone more times than she wanted to admit. There was no reply yet, only the sent message sitting patiently on the screen. She imagined the man on the other end, unaware, busy, unreachable. The uncertainty pressed on her chest in a way she hadn't anticipated. Helping someone, she realized, also meant accepting not being in control. Neither of them slept much that night, separated by distance, but tied by the same silence. Grant waited thousands of miles away with no guarantee of resolution. Lena waited a few rooms away from her son, holding space for a stranger. Both were suspended in a moment they hadn't planned for, and neither knew how deeply that moment was about to change them. Grant saw the message hours later, when his phone finally connected after landing. At first, he assumed it was another automated alert or delayed notification. Then he read the words slowly, feeling his shoulders drop in relief without noticing. The message was short, careful, and unexpectedly respectful in tone. Someone had his wallet, and they were reaching out without asking for anything. He replied almost immediately, apologizing for the inconvenience and explaining his situation. He mentioned being out of the country, unsure of what could be done from such a distance. There was no entitlement in his words, only honest concern and gratitude. For someone used to commanding rooms, this felt strangely humbling. He waited, unsure if she would respond again. Lena read his reply while standing in line at the grocery store the next morning. She could sense the stress beneath his polite wording, even through the screen. Without thinking too much about it, she answered calmly, keeping her tone simple and direct. She told him she would see what she could do, nothing more, nothing less. That choice felt natural, like continuing a conversation that had already begun. As they exchanged a few more messages, Lena noticed how careful he was with his words. There was no rush, no pressure, no subtle expectation placed on her. It made her feel respected rather than responsible for fixing everything. That difference mattered more than she realized at the time. It allowed her to stay present without feeling overwhelmed. Grant asked if there was anything inside the wallet that could help him temporarily. Lena opened it again, this time with a sense of purpose rather than hesitation. She found a document detail that seemed important and took a clear photo of it. Before sending it, she paused, making sure it felt appropriate and helpful. Then she pressed send, trusting her judgment. When Grant received the image, the impact was immediate and practical. That single detail solved a problem he had been preparing to fight all day. He didn't say much at first, but his gratitude was unmistakable. Something in the exchange shifted from problem-solving to human connection. Both felt it, even though neither named it out loud. Later that evening, curiosity led them both to glance at each other's profiles. There were no comments about appearances, no awkward acknowledgements, just a brief pause in the rhythm of their messages before continuing. The tone softened without changing direction. It was subtle, but it changed everything that followed. Neither of them realized that this quiet shift marked the real beginning. What started as a lost object had become a shared moment of trust. The situation was no longer just about returning something. It was about how two strangers chose to show up for each other. And that question was far from answered yet. Grant spent the next day moving through meetings while his attention kept drifting back to his phone. Every vibration made him pause, not because of urgency, but because of a quiet sense of anticipation. He wasn't used to waiting on someone else's goodwill, especially someone he had never met. That dependence softened him in ways he didn't fully understand yet. It reminded him how rarely he allowed himself to need anyone. Lena, on the other hand, felt a growing responsibility settle in as the day went on. She realized that returning the wallet wasn't just a task anymore, but a process that required care. She checked shipping options, airport counters, and secure delivery services between rides. Each option came with its own cost in time and money, none of which she mentioned to him. Helping meant committing, not just intending. That evening, Lena made a decision that complicated her routine, but felt right. She adjusted her schedule for the next morning, planning to stop at the airport before work. It meant waking up earlier and rearranging her son's drop-off with a neighbor. None of it was convenient, but none of it felt like a sacrifice either. It felt like choosing alignment over comfort. Grant learned about her plan through a short message that understated everything. She didn't explain the effort behind it, or frame it as something exceptional. She simply said she would take care of sending the wallet with priority handling. The simplicity of her words carried more weight than any grand gesture. It made him pause in a way business rarely did. He offered to cover costs immediately, insisting it was only fair. Lena agreed without resistance, appreciating the respect in the gesture. There was no awkwardness, no imbalance created by money or status. Each stayed firmly within their own dignity. That balance allowed trust to grow without strain. As the messages continued, their exchanges grew warmer but never crossed into excess. They spoke about practical things, then lightly about everyday moments. Grant mentioned long days and quiet dinners alone in hotel rooms. Lena mentioned early mornings and the comfort of routine. Neither complained, but both revealed pieces of themselves. Grant noticed how steady Lena's presence felt, even through short messages. There was no urgency in her tone, no need to impress or persuade. She showed up exactly as she was, and that consistency grounded him. He realized how rare that felt in his world, and that realization stayed with him longer than expected. By the time the wallet was officially sent, the situation had already changed shape. What began as a logistical problem had become a shared experience. They weren't just resolving an issue anymore. They were walking through it together, step by step, and neither was ready to admit how much that mattered. Grant received the confirmation that the wallet had been shipped while sitting alone in a quiet airport lounge. The message itself was simple, almost understated, but it landed with unexpected emotional weight. He read it twice, not because it was unclear, but because it felt final in a way he wasn't ready for. The problem was technically solved, yet something inside him felt unfinished. That realization surprised him more than the crisis itself ever had. As his meetings resumed, Grant noticed how often his thoughts drifted back to Lena. He wasn't replaying the stress of losing the wallet, but the calm way she had handled everything. Her steadiness stayed with him, cutting through the noise of negotiations and small talk. It was rare for someone to leave that kind of impression without demanding attention. That quiet presence unsettled him in the best possible way. Lena, meanwhile, returned to her routine, expecting life to move on as usual. She dropped her son off at school, drove her routes, and answered calls like any other day. Yet there was a subtle shift in how she carried herself, as if something had opened internally. Helping Grant had reminded her that her choices still mattered beyond survival. That awareness brought a sense of dignity she hadn't felt in a long time. Later that evening, Grant sent a message that went beyond logistics. He thanked her again, not formally, but personally, choosing words with care. He told her how much her decision had meant to him during a difficult moment. There was vulnerability in his tone that surprised even him. He wasn't used to speaking that way unless it was absolutely necessary. Lena read the message slowly, feeling its sincerity without overanalyzing it. She responded honestly, saying she was glad she could help, and that it felt right to do so. There was no false humility, only clarity about her own values. She didn't see herself as a hero, just someone who made a choice. That grounded honesty deepened the connection without complicating it. Their conversation lingered that night, drifting gently into shared reflections. They talked about moments when small decisions had changed their own paths. Grant admitted he rarely slowed down enough to notice those moments anymore. Lena shared how she'd learned to trust her instincts after years of relying only on herself. The exchange felt intimate without being romantic, which made it even more powerful. For Grant, that night marked a subtle but real shift in perspective. He realized he felt emotionally invested in someone without any transactional reason. There was no deal to close, no outcome to secure, no advantage to gain, just a genuine sense of care that had formed naturally. That realization stayed with him long after the conversation ended. Neither of them said it out loud, but something had clearly changed. This was no longer about a lost wallet or a kind gesture completed. A deeper bond had formed, built on trust and mutual respect. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real, and it quietly set the stage for everything that would come next. By the time Grant's meetings were over, the city no longer felt unfamiliar, but he still felt incomplete without his wallet. He had navigated hotel check-ins, conference halls, and formal dinners using temporary solutions and borrowed credentials. Each workaround reminded him how dependent his life was on systems he usually took for granted. The absence slowed him down in ways he didn't expect, forcing him to ask for help more than once. That discomfort quietly reshaped how he moved through those days. During that time, the messages between him and Lena continued, steady and unforced. They didn't speak constantly, but when they did, the conversations felt intentional. Grant shared how strange it felt to operate without his usual layers of protection. Lena listened without fixing, without minimizing, simply acknowledging what he felt. That kind of presence became grounding for him. Lena, in turn, shared pieces of her own life without dramatizing them. She talked about early mornings, about balancing work and motherhood, about learning to trust her instincts. There was strength in her honesty, but also softness she rarely showed others. Grant noticed how naturally she spoke about responsibility, not as a burden, but as a choice. That perspective stayed with him long after the messages ended each night. 2 days before his return flight, Grant received a notification from airport services. The wallet had arrived and was being held securely for pickup before departure. He read the message slowly, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation settle in his chest. The timing felt intentional, even though it was purely logistical. This chapter was finally ready to close, but not without meaning. At the airport, Grant arrived earlier than necessary, moving with quiet focus. He followed the signs, spoke with staff, and waited as paperwork was processed. When the wallet was placed in his hands, the moment felt heavier than he expected. He didn't open it right away, choosing instead to sit down and breathe. Some moments deserve to be taken in fully. When he finally opened the wallet, everything was exactly where it should be. The cards, the documents, the worn photo, and even the cash were untouched. There was no sense of relief mixed with suspicion, only gratitude. That confirmation did something unexpected inside him. It restored a level of trust he hadn't realized he'd lost. Grant sat there longer than necessary, letting the experience settle. He thought about how easily this could have gone differently, how simple it would have been for someone to ignore the wallet and move on. Instead, a stranger had chosen care over convenience, and that choice had reached him across borders. As he boarded his flight home, Grant knew the story wasn't finished. The wallet was back where it belonged, but something else had shifted permanently. He felt connected to someone in a way that had nothing to do with business or advantage. That connection asked for acknowledgement, not repayment, and he knew he would find a way to honor it. During the days between the meetings and his return flight, Grant became acutely aware of how much of his identity was tied to certainty. Without his wallet, he was forced to slow down in airports, explain himself at hotel desks, and rely on temporary solutions that made him feel exposed. Each small delay reminded him that efficiency was a privilege, not a guarantee. Instead of reacting with frustration, he found himself observing his own discomfort with curiosity. It was the first time in years that inconvenience felt instructive rather than threatening. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Grant sat alone in his hotel room with the city lights reflecting off the window. He realized that, despite the professional success of the trip, he felt emotionally quieter than usual. There was no urge to celebrate, no impulse to distract himself with work. Instead, he thought about the simplicity of Lena's messages and how grounded they felt. That contrast stayed with him long after he put his phone down. Lena, meanwhile, experienced her own internal shift back home. Helping Grant had stirred something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of agency beyond survival. For years, most of her energy had gone toward keeping things running, paying bills, and protecting her son's sense of stability. This situation reminded her that her choices could reach beyond her immediate circle. That realization felt empowering, but also unfamiliar. She noticed herself paying closer attention to the people she drove each day. Small gestures felt more visible, moments of patience more intentional. It wasn't that she had changed who she was, but that something had been reawakened. Grant's vulnerability, even from a distance, had mirrored parts of her own story. It reminded her how rare it was to be trusted without conditions. During those final days abroad, Grant noticed how differently he was experiencing time. Moments that once would have felt like delays now felt like pauses he actually needed. He paid attention to small details, the way mornings started slower and evenings felt quieter. Without meaning to, he had begun listening more and reacting less. That shift stayed with him, even before the situation was fully resolved. At the airport, as he waited to retrieve the wallet, Grant found himself reflecting on how easily this moment could have been transactional. A quick return, a thank you message, and a closed chapter. Instead, the experience had opened something personal and unresolved inside him. He understood that gratitude wasn't enough to honor what had happened. Presence mattered more than repayment. Opening the wallet and seeing everything intact, including the cash, confirmed what he already knew. Lena's actions hadn't been calculated or cautious. They had been rooted in integrity, not fear of consequences. That realization restored a level of trust in people that Grant hadn't realized had eroded over time. It wasn't dramatic, but it was deeply stabilizing. As Grant boarded his flight home, he felt a quiet sense of responsibility forming, not an obligation to repay, but an awareness that moments like this deserved acknowledgement. He didn't yet know how he would express that, only that he would. Some connections asked to be honored gently, not rushed or defined, and that understanding carried him forward into what came next. When Grant landed back home, the familiarity of the airport felt different than it ever had before. He moved through the terminal with his wallet safely back in his pocket, yet his attention was elsewhere. What stayed with him was not the stress of the loss, but the quiet intention behind Lena's choices. For days, he had been replaying their conversations, noticing how much space they had opened inside him. Something about the experience had shifted how he understood connection and responsibility. Later that evening, as he unpacked in his apartment, Grant found himself slowing down in unfamiliar ways. He placed the wallet on the counter and opened it again, not to check its contents, but to reflect. That was when he noticed something he hadn't seen before, tucked carefully behind the photo of his mother. It was a small folded note, written in plain handwriting, simple and unassuming. He stood still as he realized Lena had left him something he hadn't expected. The note wasn't long, and it didn't explain itself with dramatic words or explanations. It simply said that she hoped everything inside had helped him get where he needed to be. She added that sometimes doing the right thing was less about rules and more about timing. There was no signature, no request, no hint of expectation attached to it. The message felt like a gentle hand placed on his shoulder. Grant read the note several times, feeling a tightness form in his throat. No one had spoken to him that way in years, without wanting something in return. The simplicity of her words carried more weight than any contract he had signed recently. It wasn't gratitude that overwhelmed him, but recognition. He saw himself reflected in the moment in a way that felt honest and humbling. He thought about how many chances he'd missed to act with that same clarity in his own life. Moments where efficiency had replaced empathy without him noticing. Lena's note wasn't calling him out, but it was calling him forward. It challenged him quietly, without accusation or demand. That made it impossible to ignore. Grant sat down and stared at his phone, knowing exactly what he wanted to do next. He didn't want to send a thank you message that closed the chapter neatly. He wanted to acknowledge what had been shared without rushing past it. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about outcomes or expectations. He was thinking about presence. He typed a message asking if she would be open to meeting for coffee sometime soon. There was no pressure in the invitation, only sincerity. He told her he wanted to thank her in person, not just for the wallet, but for everything else. When he pressed send, he felt the same quiet shift he had felt days earlier. Once again, he was choosing connection over convenience. Lena saw the message later that night, after her son had fallen asleep. She read it slowly, feeling both surprise and calm settle in her chest. She hadn't expected the story to continue beyond the return of the wallet, but the invitation felt honest, not transactional or rushed. And as she considered her response, she realized this moment mattered more than she had planned for. After returning home, Grant found that the rhythm of his life no longer felt automatic. Even familiar routines carried a different weight, as if his attention had shifted inward. He noticed how often he reached for his phone without purpose, then stopped himself. The quiet days following his trip felt reflective rather than empty. Something inside him was still processing what had happened. The note Lena had left stayed with him longer than he expected. He reread it at different moments, each time hearing something new in its simplicity. It wasn't advice, and it wasn't instruction, but it carried intention. The absence of expectations made the words feel heavier, not lighter. It reminded him how rarely people offered kindness without conditions. Grant began noticing how that small piece of paper had reframed his understanding of value. In his world, meaning was usually measured through outcomes, metrics, and results. Lena's note offered none of that, yet it stayed with him more persistently than any report. It represented a moment where someone chose integrity over convenience. That realization unsettled him in a way that felt productive rather than uncomfortable. He thought about his mother more during that time, remembering how she had spoken about people. She used to say that character showed up in the smallest decisions, not the loudest ones. For years, Grant had admired that belief without truly living it. Now, through someone else's choice, it felt newly relevant. It wasn't a lesson imposed on him, but one gently offered. As days passed, Grant noticed changes in how he interacted with others. He listened longer in conversations and interrupted less often. He found himself asking questions without steering them toward outcomes. Those shifts weren't dramatic, but they were intentional. They made him feel more present than he had in a long time. Lena, meanwhile, felt the after effects of her choice in quieter ways. She didn't expect anything to come from the coffee invitation when it arrived. What surprised her was how calm she felt reading it. There was no rush of excitement or fear, only clarity. She trusted her instincts enough now to honor them without hesitation. For both of them, the story had already changed shape. What began as a lost wallet had become a mirror, reflecting parts of themselves they hadn't examined closely. Neither had been searching for transformation, yet it had found them anyway. The moment asked for acknowledgement, not explanation, and that acknowledgement was still unfolding. Grant arrived at the cafe earlier than planned, choosing a small place that felt unpretentious and quiet. He sat near the window, watching people pass by, noticing how present he felt in that moment. There was no rush, no meeting afterward, no call waiting to interrupt him. For once, his time belonged entirely to the present. That alone felt like a small but meaningful victory. When Lena walked in, there was no dramatic pause or heightened moment of recognition. She smiled naturally, scanning the room until her eyes met his. They greeted each other with an ease that surprised them both. Nothing felt forced, and nothing felt unfamiliar. It was as if the conversation had already begun days earlier. They talked about ordinary things at first, the kind that usually go unnoticed. Grant asked about her work, her son, and how she balanced everything without complaint. Lena asked about his travels, his routines, and what it was like to live constantly on the move. There was curiosity on both sides, but no urgency to define anything. The conversation unfolded at its own pace. At one point, Lena laughed softly and shook her head, as if realizing something out loud. She joked that it felt strange meeting someone this way, through a lost wallet and a few messages. Then she added, almost playfully, that it sounded like the beginning of a blind date. The comment wasn't heavy or loaded, just honest and spontaneous. It hung between them for a brief moment. Grant smiled, not rushing to respond, letting the truth settle first. He told her that for him, it already felt like the second one. Not because of romance, but because trust had already been built. The words landed gently, without expectation or pressure. Lena felt the meaning behind them more than the phrasing itself. They finished their coffee without making plans or promises. There was no talk of the future beyond the present moment, just an understanding that something genuine had been shared. That understanding didn't need a label to be real. It existed quietly, exactly as it was. As they stood to leave, Grant thanked her one last time, looking her in the eye. Lena nodded, accepting the gratitude without deflecting it. They walked in opposite directions, both carrying the same sense of calm. Nothing dramatic had happened, yet everything felt different. Sometimes healing came from being seen, not from being saved. That day marked a shift for both of them, subtle but lasting. Grant returned to his life with a renewed awareness of small choices. Lena returned to hers with a deeper trust in her instincts. Their paths diverged again, but neither felt alone anymore. A single act of kindness had quietly changed two lives forever. Later that night, as Lena prepared for the next day, she felt an unfamiliar sense of steadiness. Nothing in her life had changed on the surface, yet something inside felt lighter. She realized that kindness didn't always bring answers or certainty. Sometimes, it simply reminded you who you already were. Thanks for listening. If this story touched your heart, Subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that remind us that goodness is still alive in the world. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. See you in the next story.